The haunting deaths of a young girl and her babysitter. On a warm May evening in 1990, single mother Jan Cornell left her 11-year-old daughter Robin in the care of her close friend Lisa Story, hoping for a rare night off. Little did she know, the evening would take a horrific turn, leaving her child and dear friend dead in a brutal double murder that would haunt her for over a quarter century. When Jan returned home just before dawn, she found both Robin and Lisa dead in her upstairs bedroom, Robin's lifeless body positioned with chilling deliberation. The scene was one no parent should ever witness, and Jan's frantic 911 call marked the start of a long and agonizing journey for justice. The Cape Coral Police Department threw all their resources into the investigation, canvassing the neighborhood, conducting hundreds of interviews, and collecting physical evidence. Detectives were able to collect and save a DNA sample from the crime scene. They were strangled to death, and before fleeing with the stolen items, the killer ransacked the house, leaving behind a series of photos of Robin on an ironing board, police said. It was those gruesome details that captured the nation's attention on America's Most Wanted. The murder case has appeared on the show 3 times, most recently in 2010. But despite their tireless efforts, the killer's trail went cold, and the case eventually went cold itself, destined for the dreaded cold case files, as it languished for over 25 years. Yet Jan Cornell never lost hope. She promised herself that day she lost Robin and Lisa that she would never stop searching for their killer, no matter how much time passed. She maintained a working relationship with the Cape Coral PD, continuously pleading with them and the community to come forward with any information, convinced that someone, somewhere, knew something. Then, in 2016, a stunning break in the case emerged from an unexpected source, a DNA database match. Investigators were notified that the DNA found at the crime scene matched that of 54-year-old Joseph Zeeler, a North Fort Myers man who had somehow evaded suspicion all those years. Investigators were notified of a Cody's hit linking Zeeler's DNA to evidence from the decades-old double murder. According to records, Zeeler was arrested in Lee County 2 months after the murder for assault and battery on a police officer or firefighter, but the charges were dismissed. He was convicted of carrying a concealed weapon, dealing in stolen property, and resisting an officer with violence. Zeeler's only subsequent arrest was for possession of marijuana. No charges were filed. On August 27, 2016, the Lee County Sheriff's Office responded to Lee Memorial Hospital for a gunshot victim, identified as 25-year-old Zachary Zeeler. He was suffering from a gunshot or pellet gun wound. An investigation revealed that Zachary Zeeler and his father, Joseph Zeeler, had been involved in an altercation and that the elder Zeeler had armed himself with a pellet gun. At one point, he pointed the gun at his son and fired. Zachary's girlfriend drove him to the hospital when he said he couldn't breathe. Joseph Zeeler was arrested and charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Then Sheriff David Newland reported in 2016 that Cape detectives were notified of a recent arrest at the Lee County Jail that matched a DNA sample collected from the crime scenes of Robin Cornell and Lisa Story. Joseph Zeeler was interviewed and a sample was taken. Within days, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement confirmed the match. CCPD officials reported that under a 2009 law, anyone in Florida arrested for a felony will have their DNA sample taken and compared to Cody's. Zeeler's DNA matched a 1990 sample in the database. At first, Zeeler had told them he suffered memory loss when a car struck his motorcycle along Pine Island Road and sent him to the hospital with a seriously fractured leg, a wound on his left foot and a head injury. But he was soon exposed as a liar by his ex-girlfriend who testified about changes in the relationship, Bonnie Nicely, who had been in a relationship with Zeeler since around Memorial Day 1990 until shortly after he was implicated in the double murders in November 2016. She testified under oath that Zeeler never had memory problems, contrary to what he told authorities when they questioned him about the murders. She broke down in tears when jail call recordings were played, in which Zeeler discussed making an escape and urged Nicely to pack a bag and leave. When Zeeler testified, he accused Nicely of lying and claimed he had a sexual encounter with the victim's mother, Jan Cornell, in 1989. Zieler wrote letters to the Cornell family suggesting a relative committed the murders and threatening to drag them to the Supreme Court. At one point, the judge had to remove Zieler from the courtroom when he tried to introduce undocumented evidence that could have impacted the jury. In closing arguments, the prosecution emphasized the DNA evidence tying Zieler to the crime scene, while the defense questioned the handling of other physical evidence like hair samples and a sex toy. They tried to poke holes in the DNA evidence and suggest an alternate suspect, but the jury ultimately saw through these tactics. Ultimately, the jury convicted Zieler on 2 counts of first-degree murder. The trial, which finally began in May 2023, over 33 years after the murders, was a grueling emotional journey, particularly for Jan Cornell. She bravely took the stand, reliving the horrors of that fateful night when she discovered her daughter's lifeless body. Zieler himself even took the stand, defiantly maintaining his innocence and lashing out at witnesses, including his own former girlfriend Bonnie Nicely, who testified that he had shown no signs of memory issues in the years following the crime. Ultimately, the jury saw through Zieler's attempts to evade responsibility. After deliberating for several hours, they returned a verdict of guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder. In a dramatic conclusion, the court then sentenced Zieler to death, a fitting punishment for the heinous crimes he had committed. For Jan Cornell, the verdict and sentence brought a measure of closure, though the pain of her loss will never truly heal. Whatever the decision is, I never want him to get away with the punishment of being alone for the rest of his life. That guarantees that he will never walk another day in his life to torture him. And he is a cruel man. I don't even want to call him a man. He is cruel to the core. Because you see this. There is no remorse, Cornell said. In the aftermath, she expressed her profound gratitude to the dedicated law enforcement team, prosecutors, and community members who had never given up on her quest for justice. Through it all, her unwavering determination and love for her daughter and friend had been the driving force behind this long-awaited resolution. For 30 years, Jan Cornell has kept the last recording of her daughter Robin's voice. To Mom. Roses are red, violets are blue. Sugar is sweet, and I love you. For the first time in 33 years, Cornell said she feels at peace. Knowing that Robin and Lisa will get justice forever. Because that's all I can guarantee for them, Cornell said. Randy Richards, Story's fiancé at the time of her murder, thanked everyone involved in the case for their hard work over 3 decades. It's been a long and difficult road. Words can't express the gratitude I feel, Richards said Monday. I hope Lisa and Robin have a little more smile on their faces today. As for Zieler, Cornell called him a monster. I really want him out of prison. Just like my daughter and my friend left their house in body bags, zipped up, and then justice will be served. Because we will never know why he went there. We can only speculate and guess that we don't know. Because he was an evil man. While nothing can undo the tragedy that unfolded on that fateful night in 1990, the conviction and sentencing of Joseph Zieler has finally provided a sense of closure and vindication for Jan Cornell and all those affected by this senseless and horrific crime. The case stands as a testament to the power of perseverance, the advancement of forensic science, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child.